Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is July 20th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now for this segment, I'm going to step a little bit away from scientific and global climate analysis and weather analysis and talk to you about some of the social issues surrounding the debate over climate change. And just to be clear, the science on climate change is settled, but the politics is not. And there's a lot of polarization surrounding the notion of climate change. And what I'm going to dig into is why. Why is there so much polarization surrounding climate change? And who does it serve? Now, polarization in this context is a political term. It means that people, for the most part, in a polarized issue have withdrawn to their tribes and their political perspectives to the point where they're frozen. They're frozen on the issue and they've become inflexible. Now, in the case where you have a fact, such as the fact that the Earth is being warmed by human fossil fuel emissions, and there's polarization occurring over a fact in the political spectrum, usually it's because there is a monetary interest that is threatened by that fact. And that is the case. In order to respond to climate change, fossil fuel burning needs to be dramatically reduced and eventually reduced to zero over a rather short period of time. And this will result in fossil fuels being left in the ground. And that results in stranded assets, in companies that invested hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in developing fossil fuels for sale, losing money, going bankrupt. And so there's a conflict of interest. There's a monetary interest that goes against the public interest, because if there is no climate response, then lots of people get hurt in the most simple description. So rather than looking at how to get around the issue of stranded fossil fuel assets, the fossil fuel companies have spent a lot of money creating polarization in the political spectrum. And we're going to get into that a little bit. So in this article written by Inside Climate News, the authors delve into the vast amount of money that has been spent by fossil fuel industry on institutions like Heartland and other think tanks that intentionally cloud the science. And in this article, I'm going to just read you a couple of quotes. So the Heartland Institute is just one conservative think tank. And it launched a billboard campaign in 2012 to compare believers of global warming to murderers and madmen such as the Unabomber and Charles Manson and Osama bin Laden. And this is just one example of a media campaign by Heartland that targeted people's basic, deepest fears, and primarily targeted conservatives in this way to generate a reaction, to generate a visceral, fear-based reaction to scientists, and to science itself by branding climate scientists and those who believe in human-caused climate change and those who support the evidence, the vast evidence of human-caused climate change as some of the most feared people to conservatives. And this is just one of the most extreme examples. This fear and smear campaign by fossil fuel industry think tanks has been ongoing for a number of years. One of the most prominent examples is the Smear and Fear campaign aimed at Dr. Michael Mann. And it's worth noting that according to this article and according to a number of explorations into this issue, that hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into promoting these think tanks that in turn promote climate change denial as a fear and smear campaign. It's all those scary scientists at the UN that are just promoting themselves and going to make themselves rich by talking about climate change and things like that, similar to smear and fear campaigns against racial minorities and ethnic minorities, such as Jews. These organizations tapped into that deep-seated irrationality in order to attack the science. So keeping that in context, I want to take a look at this survey that was recently put out in Skeptical Science. And the survey notes that Republicans and Democrats agree on climate change. They just don't realize it. So, oddly enough, despite the fact that a portion of Republicans and the conservative base have been targeted by this deep-seated fear and smear campaign, according to this survey, across party lines there is general agreement that climate change is real and that it is caused by human activity and that something should be done about it. So that's the baseline, right? But what's happening is that these think tanks are creating loud detractors, and these loud detractors, basically agitators, if you were to consider it in an old political context, are helping to polarize the issue, regardless of a general agreement. And what does that do? It gives cover for lobbying groups to manipulate the politics by targeting Republicans in Congress as a constituency that opposes actual policy on climate change. And in that particular context, I'd like to call to your attention the fact that the fossil fuel industry spent nearly $2 billion to kill U.S. climate action since the year 2000, which is a 10-to-1 spending ratio versus environmental lobbying. And so just to reiterate, the fossil fuel industry outspent environmentalists 10-to-1 on climate change lobbying. And this is in addition to all of the hundreds of millions of dollars that go into those so-called think tanks that I described to you earlier. So the polarization provides a cover and allows these lobbying efforts to operate in an open environment, and it clouds the minds of Republicans about the will of their constituents and by generating a lot of loud noise. And so Republicans are receiving a lot of money from climate change lobbyists, a lot of political interest, and a lot of noise. And so as we see here, according to this new National Climate Change Lobbying Assessment, during the same period that there were smear and fear campaigns going out labeling scientists as equivalent to Osama bin Laden, there was also hundreds of millions of dollars being spent lobbying Congress to prevent climate action and to prevent strong policies that will result in more rapid United States action on the issue of climate change. So just a 10-minute snapshot of the current state of play in the politics. But I think the thing that we should focus on in the context of all this smear and fear is there's a lot that unites us. And maybe we should think about that a bit more.